Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Natalia. Today, let's discuss how we overread tarot and how we sometimes underread tarot and what I mean by that. This idea came from watching a recent video by Tempe Pie that I just started to watch. I haven't fully finished it, that I think is really good. I'm going to link it below. The expert decks, 5 readings with decks that readers find difficult. And Tempe selects some of the tarot decks that generally are known to be difficult decks to read with, perhaps the decks that are not decks for beginners, but decks that are maybe not, a lot of people would not think you can just pick up and read with. Mary Ella's example, Janessa Joust is another example. She has some of those decks, and she uses them to do personal readings to demonstrate how you can read with these decks. You can read with any decks. So I started watching TMP's video and got my wheels spinning and thinking, and watching her video took me back to 1996. Yes, 1996. When I started doing tarot readings with those of you who know me as a Zos lover, maybe gasp, that actually started my tarot journey with Rider-Waite-Smith. Sigh. Sorry, I'm making a face about Rider-Waite-Smith. Many of you know I have kind of love-hate relationship with this deck. I have a lot of opinions about this deck. I'm very opinionated about this deck. My feelings about it and the faces I make are my own. So if you love this deck, fucking fantastic. A lot of people hate those, and I love it. So to each its own, okay? Having said that, this is what I started my journey with. And Chepi got me thinking, guys. And I bet a lot of us experience the same thing I have experienced and continue to experience. How we pretty much everybody started with underreading tarot. What do I mean by underreading tarot? I remember when I used this deck, was only using this. I had no other tarot books. I did not even think there was 78 Degrees of Wisdoms out there. It never occurred to me that there's another tarot book. There was no YouTube back then. And so I just read this deck using the meanings in this little tiny white book. Then, as time went on, and I moved to New York City in about 2000, I worked in a hair salon, and I did a lot of tarot readings there for staff. I was like the tarot reading girl. And I used this deck. And back then I had one of those books by, oh gosh, what is the name? Angela Arias. But I seldom brought the book with me because it's a big, heavy book. And so I schlepped all the way from Brooklyn, where I used to live, to Manhattan, to where I worked, just carrying the tarot deck. This is why actually you see, my deck is quite worn out and gray because it was used. And I remember sitting on a footpath of our salon during lunch break, doing tarot reading for the staff with this deck, and how I got to the point where I didn't even consult this. And I remember that I did not know thoroughly every card. I did not know thoroughly astrological associations. I did not know thoroughly a lot of esoteric symbolism in it. I didn't even know this deck had esoteric symbolism in it. All I knew was how to read pictures. This is what I call under reading your tarot. Some of you may say, well, that's really not under reading it. You're using your intuition. In fact, one could argue that you are a better reader at the time than somebody today who knows every single esoteric symbolism on a card, every single astrological placement on the card. And I agree with that. And I also disagree with that because I learned over the years that there's multiple angles looking at tarot and multiple angles looking at this. When I say I was under reading, I don't mean that I wasn't really reading tarot. What I use the language under reading, meaning I was underinformed fully in everything that the cards had. And I was reading purely intuitively. And my intuition was combined with a combination of what I see on the cards. What I saw, a person I was reading for was projecting back then. My God, I swear to God, I was already a natural psychologist to some extent because I was doing what we do in therapy. Pay attention to what person says, their body language, their physical expressions, uh, ask little open-ended questions, have them open up so that you can really see what's going on. What is it that causing them the most distress? So that way, then you can lead them to help them figure out for themselves, lead them to their own aha moments. I was already doing that, but I was using images. And I was basically laying out cards. And back then, obviously, some of the cards I already knew what they stood for. A lot of cards I didn't, but I just led with images. And I just read them intuitively, as I said earlier, but also projectively, meaning projecting my own things into it, and then also transferring projections of the person I was reading for. And looking back, I'm smiling now because we seldom appreciate the noviceness of craft, any craft. If you are into any kind of magic craft, think about when you started out, how bold you were, how you were maybe intuitively combining correspondences, and what a beautiful dance that is. I recently watched a little introductory trailer to a new root working class offered by Blackthorn School that offers a lot of classes. That's where I took Jack Rail's Hackaday class. So there was a new class on root work that I was interested in. So I went to see one of those little introductory trailer by the teacher, can't recall his name. And he said something really beautiful. He said, my aim of the root work and who to work in this class for all of you is not necessarily just to give you a lot of material, but to get you to the point where you figure out how it connects to you and how you can then layer it within yourself and how you can then work in relationship to yourself, meaning make it your own. And he said this, he said, and I'm paraphrasing all of this, but he said, a lot of root work is like jazz. It's a lot of improvising. It's an art form. We heard this many times before. We heard this many times in regards to tarot reading, in regards to I'm blanking right now, to any kind of magical craft, right? It's improvising. It is into combining not only your skill set, your knowledge, but also your intuition, and sometimes just a little bit of playfulness, a little bit of something you never thought about before that makes it all solidify and come together. And that's what I say when we underread the cards. All of us who started out reading tarot, I would guess, were underreading tarot, meaning all of us were a lot of times led by our gut instinct, intuition. And I just remember those readings. I gotta say, those readings were pretty damn spot on because people would give me feedback. And maybe even more spot on than there now that I'm overreading. We'll get to that. So it got me thinking how we all start off with underreading. We all start off with this deck or any other deck, and maybe we do have a book and we do consult the book, but for the most part, the playfulness is still there and we engage in the play. And then what happens is what happened, at least to me, I don't know if it happened to you, is I started, I'm going to try to use I as much as possible so that I'm not generalizing. I started over reading tarot. What do I mean by overreading? The opposite of underreading. I started going very deep into esoteric symbolism, really deep into understanding of the mysterious nature and structure of the tarot, really deep into every single meaning on a card, really deep into astrology, to some extent deep into Kabbalah, to some extent deep into sacred geometry, and so far and so on and so forth. And all of the things, at least to somebody like myself, not everybody's going to overeat. It also depends on your personality. Some people are very geeky, nerdy knowledge seekers that go down the rabbit hole of obsessiveness. That's me. And so for me, overreading was not only felt like necessity in order to really understand what I'm doing, but overreading for me was also um, such and still is such joy because I'm such information gathering machine. I'm a sucker for information. I love consuming a lot. I love to read a lot. I love to synthesize a lot of information. I believe this is one of the reasons why I have developed pretty good teaching capacities and abilities to articulate back what I have learned because I'm such information accumulator. And I love it. It's a passion of mine. If there was a vocation, if somebody could give me a vocation and pay me money just to synthesize information, I would so do it. So when overreading started to happen, it took readings to a different level. I'm going to use this as examples, even though you can do overreading and underreading with any deck. Over here, it was playful, it was free. Free comes to mind. Over here, it was still playful, but it was more now confined within parameters of what I knew to be true about this, what the facts were. And by facts, I mean everything we know that's written by scholars of tarot on symbols and meaning of each one of the cards. Two different readings, two different style of reading. I can't argue whether one is better than the other. What I can say is that there was a period of time when I strongly hold an opinion that in order to read tarot, you need to be strongly rooted in foundations of it. I no longer hold that opinion because, as we know, opinions change. I do still have an opinion that if a person is going to charge somebody for a reading, um, my opinion is that they still need to be knowledgeable in some foundations of the tarot. Just like anything else, if you're going to go to a mental health provider who markets themselves as a therapist, you assume to have some knowledge in some basic foundations of psychotherapy. They're not just somebody who woke up one day and said, I'm going to just do intuitive psychotherapy. Again, my point of view. So, but what I realized is that the underreading, I would sway between doing this and needing to know everything and anything I know about the card, which seems like an ongoing quest and never-ending train, to a strong desire to underread and just be free and not to be confined to any esoteric symbolism. In order to get this balance, this is where a lot of times oracles come for me, or this is where a lot of times tarot decks, I don't have any on my desk right now, so I'm trying to think what's behind my back where I keep my tarot decks. This is where tarot decks that are artistically different, very different than rendition of those of Rider-Waite Smith, enable that freedom to get away from totally underreading or overreading and be somewhere in between, where I'm able to lead with intuition and my own associations to the cards, but at the same time, where I'm also able to start layering them with some knowledge that I have. This is why I love tarot decks that come out on the market that are thoughtfully, artistically crafted, where they clearly depict a knowledge of the base foundations, but then they take the art in a pretty much different direction. Mary L, for example, that TMP used, is such an example. You look at the cards and the foundation is there, but foundation is so modified where a lot of Mary L cards, you look at them and you can't immediately say, yes, I'm looking at, for example, Four of Swords, or yes, I'm looking at, a Ten of Pentacles. You can't. You really can't, unless you really know Marielle to a T. A lot of cards, you look at them, if you're for the first time looking at Marielle, and you wonder, what is it that I'm looking at? And you're looking at a story. You're looking at a story that has deeper roots to actual esoteric foundational aspects of it. But it allows you the freedom to play. It allows you, now I'm thinking about, I should have named this video the freedom of this, of what I'm talking about, rather unread or underread or overread decks. And that's where the beauty lies with those decks. They allow you that freedom while also giving you the anchor in esoteric things. And I found it also interesting that when we know so much about the cards, there comes a point, at least for me, there comes a point where I'm almost too confined by all of this knowledge that I accumulated. It reminds me again of grad school. I went to graduate school and I had to learn about different therapeutic modalities and different therapeutic techniques. And then when I graduated and I did my clinical practicum with patients, of course, the first couple of years, as I'm sitting there with the patient, I'm trying to think through everything I learned, and I'm trying to go through the whole DSM to try to figure out what is it that they're struggling with, what is it that ails them, is it something that actually is categorized in DSM, Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which now I don't even use because what a bullshit book it is. Different story. But so you're sitting there, and then you also, once you figure out what is ailing them, what is bothering them, then you try to remember which therapeutic modality is best, which one is perhaps best evidence-based treatment to incorporate. If somebody comes to you and they clearly have clinical depression, what is the best treatment option based on their symptomology at this point? So you constantly, you almost like splitting as a therapist, because part of you is tries to be present and tries to be in the here and now with the patient. Part of you is being that inner librarian, going through the knowledge base that you accumulated, trying to sort out and figure things out. And as a result, we all have to go through this, right? Everybody, whoever got licensed for anything, every doctor, everybody will have to go through, every tarot reader goes through that period when you're doing a reading, for example, for people, and part of you is present, but part of you is absent because you're remembering everything you learned about the card and how to synthesize it with what they're saying. And it's such a little bit forced junction that we'll experience. And it's not until we get to the point of reading of any craft, therapy, being a great dentist, that we get to the point where we're able to be here and now. And the information is there, but we don't need to go and ask our inner librarian to pull things out for us. Where we are artistically, we're doing jazz. That's what we're doing. We're dancing, we're doing jazz. We're artistically dancing and improvising, and we're intuitively picking up on things and remembering some things and bringing them forward. We're in the jazz musical kitchen, pulling on ingredients as we go along with the client. And that's what I think goal is for me when it comes to tarot reading, is to be. And I feel like I am now at this point where I'm able to be present, and I know enough foundational things, enough esoteric symbolism where it's there, but I also don't have to constantly consult my inner librarian. So it's this beautiful middle position where I'm no longer under reading, but not also fully overreading, but where I am, what would be the word for under reading and overreading meshed together? Balanced reading. Same thing with therapy. I'm at the point now in therapy where the intuition is so sharpened. The understanding of the human psyche is so sharpened. And I don't mean that it's sharpened where I generalize to everybody else. No, but it's sharpened to the extent where I'm able to see the individual for where they're at, and I'm able to be present and focus with that individual and do the beautiful jazz dance and understanding and assessing what bothering them and what exactly they need at this moment, or what at least the best option for them at this moment. And it's when Tempe did that video, it got me thinking at what point do we start making assumptions that, oh, I can't read the deck? And I don't actually remember ever. I'm trying to think. I don't think there ever been a time when I thought I can't read the deck. There has been a thought that this deck is a new system that I will have to learn, or I will have to find a way to adopt the foundational meanings that I know to this deck. But there never been a time when I couldn't really fully, not fully, but at least read some aspects of the deck, right? Because we're still reading artwork, we're reading something. No matter how we think it's challenging, we're still able to read some parts of it. And so I wonder, how does one get to the point where they feel like they can't? What is it can't? As Tempe does in that video, beautifully demonstrate that of course you can. Just open the box, pull the cards, read them. What do you see? What are you looking for? Even if you don't know, what are you looking? What does it look like? Does it look like coins? Great. Is there a lot of them? Great. Does this look like a handful of abundance? Great. What does it look like? Swords. Red. What do you think when it comes to red? Lot. Ouch. Achy. What happened? Did the war just end? Just you can keep going and going and going, and there's something you can always pick up in the cards. And I wonder, when do we get to the point where our mind becomes a blockage, becomes an impediment between the jazz? Of course, as I said earlier, for me, jazz is a combination. No foundation, and then you bring in new intuitive things and you mesh them together, right? But I always get stumped when I do a video on this deck and some people comment and say, I feel intimidated. I don't think that I can read those. I can't pick up those. Or when I do video on some other deck, some deck, for example, right now I am getting deeply enmeshed in Terror of the Hoylite, which was the first time I'm using reversals with. And if you know me, Trimming Queen, trimmed two, of course. And I know that some people say, oh no, that's a completely different system. And that's what I thought 2 years ago when it came out. And now I'm circling back to it, realizing it is not a new system. It is not a new system. Christian, basically what she's doing, she's bringing the esoteric knowledge and symbolism before the Golden Dawn. But it's not new. It's not new at all. And so we pick up the stacks and we think, oh no, I can't. Oh no, new system. Oh no, no way. But pictures just like this, two different storybooks. One could argue it more simplified. Okay, let me rephrase it. I'm taking a deep sigh. You know why? Because I read lately a lot about Pixie and I understood her style of art and what a prolific and amazing artist she was for her time period. And after reading that, I appreciate the artwork in this. I can't erase, for me, this is going to sound awful, but I'm going to be honest. For me, it just feels like a lazy deck for me. And by lazy, what I mean is the storytelling is so, how should I say it? It's very clear what's going on, yes, which is also a testament to her great artwork, right? And I gotta be honest with you, I make a judgment call too harsh. And now that I'm talking about it, I also want to say this, which is going to make me sound totally hypocrite. Simple is very difficult to do well. It is so challenging to do simple well. We have a lot of decks that are layered and layered and layered with artwork and are complicated as heck. Doesn't mean that they're any better. Sometimes simple is the best because then you can layer what's happening between you and the reader onto simple. So I now, I take the lazy art back now, to be honest. I think there's a lot to this deck I don't give a credit to. And I think part of it is my own resistance and personal association to it, obviously. But they're both storybooks, right? One may be more graphic, more, each card is more layered. One may be less graphic. But there's all both the same storybooks. By the same, I mean, they're picture images for us to be able to read. And so it's very interesting to me how we as, just really interesting to me how we get into this trap of I can't read Jonas Jaus or I can't read Marseille. Of course you can. We all can. And we forget that. And I wonder if we forget that, or if sometimes that becomes a block that we can't read it, because we live in a world where I feel with the social media and everything else, and the way the world is now in direction that the world is moving to, I feel for me, it takes me away from playfulness, and it takes me away from intuitive, and it takes me away from trusting my own inner voice and trusting my own gut instincts. And it takes me more um, to needing somebody to tell me what it means, somebody to confirm what it means. So there's this mistrust I feel happening to me with the way the world is now operating and revolving around. It instills a mistrust in my own inner voice, mistrust in trusting my own truth. And that's why I think we gravitate toward, let me confirm that this is exactly what it is. And that's why perhaps decks that seem unfamiliar, we shy away from using our intuition, because how do we know for sure that our intuition is right? And that's, I think, what makes it a block. But I think it's really fascinating, this idea of underreading and then overreading decks, and how do we find this jazz move and dance in between? Yeah, I think that's really, to me, that's really interesting to think about. And there's many times when I'm in the jazz packet, and there's sometimes times when I feel like I want to go back to overreading my decks, and I do that, and I'm doing that right now with the Terror of the Holy Light, reading the Christian's books, which, by the way, probably is the best tarot book ever on describing and understanding court cards, in my opinion. So it's very it's interesting, the playfulness. I think what we're talking about here, what I'm talking about here, is the absence of playfulness when it comes to tarot, and that seriousness. And like I said, not too long ago, I hold an opinion that you have to have foundational meanings, and if you're reading it intuitively, you're doing something else. And I no longer have that opinion. I think that there's multitude ways to approach tarot. There's multitude ways of discussing it, especially, not to mention, when we are talking about when somebody reads tarot intuitively. Let's say somebody picks up tarot deck out of the box, right? Let's say they picked up this deck or Pixie's deck out of the box, and they never ever used it. They don't even have booklet for it, and they just start reading pictures intuitively. One could make a really beautiful discussion revolving around the fact that one of the reasons why their intuition will also be spot on accurate is because they're tapping into the archetypal energies and all of the layered energies associated with each one of the cards that each one of us foundationally hold collectively together. So they're tapping into this collective kind of unconscious, if you will, of the symbolism, and that's what propels the intuition forward. So then one can argue that we don't even need books at all when we're dealing with a pack of cards that is so supercharged with meanings that no matter what you do, you will still derive the meaning. It's just like Lon Miller Duquette in his class on the Zostad said that Lady Frida Harris used all of the scale attributes for the coloration for the cards. And it's designed in such a way that even if you don't know anything about Two of Wands, which is the minion, all you have to do is look at it, and your retina of your eye will pick up the color scales and will pick up the emotions embedded in the card. So anyways, it's such a fascinating discussions. I can go on and on and on and on. Can you tell? Let me know, comment below, let me know what your thoughts are on tarot. How are you reading tarot after all of these years? Do you think it is underrated, or, I mean, underrated? I think tarot is actually overrated. do you think it is, do you underread it or overread it? What are your thoughts on it? Which text do you find difficult? Which text do you find not challenging enough? Like I said, this deck, while part of me that thinks is not challenging enough, I call it lazy. At the same time, I actually think it is much more challenging because, again, it is sometimes, oftentimes, simple is harder to externalize than complicated. So comment below, let me know what your thoughts are, and I will talk to you all next time. Bye.